Welcome, middle school algebra students. This is Mrs. Bross. Today we're going to work on lesson 2.1.9. What is x? More solving equations. Today you will explore more equations on the equation mat and will examine all of the tools you have developed so far to solve for x. While you are working on these problems, be prepared to answer the questions that follow. How can you simplify? Can you get the variable alone? Is there more than one way to simplify? And is there always a solution? Problem 2-81. On your paper, write the equation represented in each diagram below. For each equation, simplify as much as possible and then solve for x or y. Be sure to record your work on your paper. So middle school algebra students, I would recommend going to the eTools in your CPM ebook and create this diagram here for 281A on an equation mat. Then let's write your work. So problem 281A, let's write down your work by writing the left side of the equation, the right side of the equation. And then remember, in the far right column here, leave space to explain each step as you work on simplifying the equation. So pause the video now and either copy this diagram for 281A, either copy this diagram on your paper or go to your eTool and build this on an equation mat. Please label your paper 281A and leave work here for the left side, the right side, and then explaining your work. Pause the video now until you're ready to see me work out problem 2-81A. So here I have built an equation mat for 2-81A, and now I need to write the equation that's represented by this equation mat. So on the left side here, I have x plus 3. And in the opposite region, I have x minus 1. On the right-hand side of the equal sign, I have x minus 2. And in the opposite region, I have x minus 2x. Now I need to simplify this equation in order to solve for x. I want to know, what does x equal? So the first thing that I prefer to do, and there are many ways that you can simplify this equation, but the way that I like to start is to flip the tiles from the negative region to the positive region. Remember, when we do that, we have to change the sign on the tile. Now that I have flipped my tiles from the negative region to the positive region, I am left with, on the left side here, x plus 3 minus x plus 1. And on the right-hand side, I'm left with x minus 2 minus x plus 2x. Next, to simplify this equation, I am going to combine like terms by removing zero pairs. Remember, a zero pair is the same tile in the same region where one is positive and the other is negative. So on the left-hand side, I have a positive x and a negative x. Together, those equal 0, so I can remove that zero pair from the mat. On the right-hand side here, I see another zero pair. A positive x tile and a negative x tile equals 0, so I will remove that as well. Now on the left-hand side, I am left with 4. And on the right-hand side of the equation, I am left with 2x minus 2. Now my end goal is to get an x tile by itself so I know what it equals. I need to eliminate these negative 1 unit tiles. but I don't have any more 0 pairs. So the next step that I'm going to do is actually to add unit tiles to make 0 pairs. So on the right-hand side, I added these 2 positive unit tiles. Because I added 2 on the right, I must add 2 to the left in order to keep my equation balanced. And now I see here on the right-hand side, I can remove these 0 pairs. So now on the left-hand side of the equation, I'm left with 6. And on the right-hand side of the equation, I'm left with 2x. Now what I'm going to do is divide these x tiles into single piles. I want to know, what does 1x equal? Well, I know 2x is equal to 6. So I'm going to divide up my unit tiles to see how many 1x equals. So here, after dividing my unit tiles, I can see that 1x is equal to 3. So my solution to this equation is x is equal to 3. Now, middle school algebra students, let's do the same for 2-81b. Please take a look at the equation mat in your book and either write it on your paper, or I would suggest building it using the e-tool. After you have built the equation on the equation mat, write down your equation on your paper. Pause the video now until you have that done, and then unpause when you're ready to see my work. All right, here I have built the equation mat for 2-81b. Our first step is to write the equation on our paper. So on the left side here, I see I have 2y, and in the opposite region, I have y minus 2. On the right-hand side of the equation, I see here I have negative 2, and in the opposite region, I have negative y. There are many ways to simplify this equation, but I always prefer as a first step to flip my tiles from the negative region to the positive region. So remember, middle school algebra students, when we do that, when we flip a tile from the negative region to the positive region, we must also flip the sign on the tile. Now the next thing that I'm going to do is combine my like terms by removing any 0 pairs. On the left-hand side of the equation here, I see I have a positive y tile and a negative y tile. Together, those equal 0, so I can remove that 0 pair. And now on the left side of the equation, I am left with y plus 2. I don't see any 0 pairs on the right-hand side of my equation here. Now, when I look at this equation mat, I do see that I have an identical tile, y, on the left and on the right. So remember, 8th graders or middle school algebra students, another legal move is to remove identical tiles from the left and from the right. So now when I simplify my equation, I see I do not have any y's left. And what I am left with is positive 2 is equal to negative 2. Well, that's an incorrect statement. 2 is not equal to negative 2. And I do not have any y tiles left. So this is an example of an equation where there is no solution. So in other words, there is no number that I can substitute in for y, where the left side of the equation will equal the right side of the equation. So again, the answer to 281b is no solution. Moving on to problem 2-82. Is there a solution? While solving homework last night, Richie came across 3 homework questions that he thinks have no solution. Build each equation below and determine if it has a solution for x. If it has a solution, find it. If it does not have a solution, explain why or why not. Explore using the virtual tiles below. So middle school algebra students, what I would like you to do now is open the 282A Student eTool. Then on your paper, please label 282A. Write the equation, including the left side and the right side, and then try to simplify your equation, writing down your steps for explaining your work. Please try 282A, B, and C. And after you've written those equations and simplified them to try to find a solution for X, unpause the video and you can see my work on each of the equations. But pause the video now and try 282A, B, and C on your own, writing your work on your paper just as we did for the last problem. Now let's take a look at the equation mat for 282B. First, I want to write the equation that's represented by the equation mat. So on the left-hand side, I see I have x plus 1 minus 1, and in the opposite region, I have negative 2. On the right-hand side of my equation, I have x plus 3, and in the opposite region, I have negative x plus 1. Now I want to simplify my equation. The first thing that I like to do is to flip the tiles from the negative region to the positive region. Remember, when we do that, we must change the sign on the tile. So now on the left-hand side of the equation, I have x plus 1 minus 1 plus 2. Now I'm going to flip my tiles on the right side. And now I am left with x plus 3 plus x minus 1. Now what I want to do is combine my like terms by removing zero pairs. On the left-hand side of the equation, I can see here that I have a negative 1 tile and a positive 1 tile. Together, they equal 0, so I can remove that 0 pair. On the left-hand side now, I'm left with x plus 2. On the right-hand side of the equation, I see that I have a 0 pair here. Positive 1 and negative 1 equals 0. So I'm going to remove that 0 pair as well, leaving me with 2x plus 2. Now, to simplify my equation, I'm going to remove identical tiles from the left and from the right side of the equation mat. So I can see that I have a positive x tile on the left and on the right. I can remove identical tiles from the left and from the right. I also see here that I have positive 2 tiles on the left and positive 2 tiles on the right. I can remove identical tiles from the left and from the right, so I can remove 2 from the left and from the right. So now I am left with 0 on the left and x on the right. So in other words, x is equal to 0. Or in other words, the solution to this equation is x equals 0. This is not an example of a no solution. There is a solution to this equation, and the solution is that x is equal to 0. So when I substitute 0 into each of the x's in the original equation, the left side is equal to the right side. Now let's take a look at the eTool for 282C. First, let's write the equation represented on this equation mat. So we have negative x minus 4 plus 1. And in the opposite region, we have 4 minus 1. And on the right-hand side of the equation, I have negative x minus 2. And in the opposite region, I have 4. Now let's simplify our equation. The first step that I like to take is flipping the tiles from the negative region to the positive region, and then changing the sign on the tile as I do that. On the left-hand side of the equation, I now have negative x minus 4 plus 1 minus 4 plus 1. Now let's flip the tiles on the right-hand side of the equation. So I'm moving them from the negative region to the positive region and flipping the sign on the tile. Now I have negative x minus 2 minus 4. Now let's simplify our equation by combining like terms by removing zero pairs. On the left-hand side of the equation, I can see I have one zero pair here. A negative 1 and positive 1 equals 0. I also have another zero pair here. A negative 1 and a positive 1 tile equal 0. So on the left-hand side of the equation, after removing the zero pairs, I'm left with negative x minus 6. There are no zero pairs on the right-hand side of the equation to remove, so I am just left with negative x minus 6. Well, you're probably already noticing something. The left side of the equation mat is identical to the right side of the equation mat. So what we could do next is remove identical tiles from the left and from the right. So I could remove this negative x tile from the left and the negative x tile from the right because they are identical. And what I can see here is I have no x tiles left. And what I have is negative 6 is equal to negative 6. Well, is that a true statement? Yes, it is. So middle school algebra students, this is a sign that the solution to this equation is all real numbers. In other words, any number that you substitute into the original equation for x will make the equation a true statement. Some of you may have also seen, wait, I have negative 6 tiles on the left and negative 6 tiles on the right. I can remove those because they're identical. Yes, you can. And then you would be left with 0 equals 0, which is also a true statement. So again, because there is no x left on my equation mat, I don't have a solution of x equals a number, but instead my solution is all real numbers, or in other words, any number is a solution to this equation.